Picture this. It's 3 p.m. on a Tuesday. Alex, a Gen Z star on the marketing team, is on Microsoft Teams. They fire off a message to their millennial boss, Sarah. It reads, OMG project is urgent boss, =need. Your thoughts ASAP. Across the office, Sarah's screen lights up. She squints her face, a mix of confusion and mild panic. She mutters to herself, urgent, but they're laughing. And is that a skull? Is the project dead? Is this a cry for help? Determined to be a good professional manager, Sarah spends the next 10 minutes crafting a reply. It's a half-page email complete with a formal Hi Alex 3 bulleted paragraphs of jargon-filled questions and a classic best regards sign-off. Alex's phone buzzes. They open the email and their eyes immediately glaze over. A heavy sigh. TLDR, too long. Didn't read. I'll just get to this later. And just like that, the urgent project grinds to a halt. Sound familiar? It's the communication breakdown happening in offices everywhere. Two generations speaking the same language but completely missing the wave. Why does a simple message get lost in translation, and how can a single period in a text message be interpreted as an act of war? Stick around. Want to keep up watch now as we decode the 7 ways these two generations are creating a communication revolution. The channel wars email versus instant messenger. To understand this communication clash, we have to start with the digital worlds each generation grew up in. It's not just about preferring one app over another, it's about a fundamental difference in how they were taught to communicate. Millennials born between 1981 and 1996 are what we can call digital adapters. They grew up as the internet was being born, witnessing the shift from dial-up to broadband. They adopted email as the new professional standard, a digital version of a formal letter or memo. For them, email is often the default for official business. It's structured, it creates a paper trail, and it feels professional. Gen Z, on the other hand, is true digital natives. Born from 1997 onwards, they have no memory of a world without smartphones and social media. Their native environment isn't the email inbox, it's the fast-flowing conversational river of instant messaging platforms like Slack, Teams, and iMessage. Research shows that nearly half of Gen Z employees, 49% to be exact, prefer these instant messaging platforms for work communication. They prioritize the real-time back-and-forth flow over the archive formality of an email thread. This brings us to the most dramatic channel conflict of all, the telephone. The rise of what's been dubbed telephobia among younger generations is a critical piece of this puzzle. For many Gen Zers, an unscheduled phone call feels like a pop quiz they didn't study for. It's an intrusion that demands an immediate, unprepared, real-time performance. This isn't just about avoiding spam calls. It's about a deep-seated preference for asynchronous communication, the ability to receive information, process it, and craft a response on your own time. The statistics are staggering. A 2024 U-Switch survey found that nearly 70% of adults aged 34 prefer texting to talking. Other studies show that 68% will only answer a call if it's been scheduled in advance. To them, an unexpected call often signals bad news or an emergency. The language barrier, emojis, slang, and the professional tone. So we've established the where of the communication gap. Now let's look at the what. For Gen Z, communication is inherently visual and emotionally expressive. Emojis, GIFs, and memes aren't just decorative fluff. They are sophisticated and highly efficient language. They add tone, nuance, and emotional context that plain text simply can't convey. Their use of slang and abbreviations is a feature, not a bug. It's designed for speed, relatability, and building connection. A staggering 97% of Gen Z employees believe it's important to be able to show their personality at work, and this is the primary way they do it. Millennials occupy the middle ground. They were the generation that first brought emojis into the mainstream, but they tend to use them more literally. They've relaxed. The rigid formality of previous generations long gone are the days of ending every internal email with sincerely, but they still default to writing in full grammatically correct sentences. They were taught that this was the baseline for professionalism, and they often avoided slang in formal context to maintain that standard. This is where the wires get crossed because the same symbol can mean wildly different things to each group. Let's look at a few examples. Take the classic thumbs up emoji. For a millennial, it's a simple positive affirmation. Got it, or good job. But for many in Gen Z, it can come across as passive-aggressive, dismissive, or a blunt way to end a conversation. The skull emoji isn't a sign of danger, it's a declaration that something is hilariously funny. The classic crying, laughing face to a millennial, it's sincere humor. To Gen Z, it's often seen as outdated or even cringy. Even the simple red heart can be used sarcastically or to soften a rejection, like texting, "No, can't do it." The disconnect is profound. A millennial manager sending a thumbs up believes they're being efficient and positive. The Gen Z employee, however, might read it as a rude, dismissive brush-off. The millennial is following the old rule of professional etiquette, acknowledging the message, while the Gen Z employee interprets it through a complex, nuanced lens of digital emotion. 3. The formality fault line, DMing the CEO. This communication gap extends beyond language and into behavior, especially when it comes to hierarchy. Gen Z grew up in a world where they could directly tweet at celebrities, founders, and world leaders. This has fostered a deep appreciation for authenticity, transparency, and flat communication structures. In the workplace, this translates into a tendency to bypass traditional channels if they feel a direct message is the most efficient path to an answer. They don't see DMing a senior leader on Slack as disrespectful. They see it as the most direct and authentic way to solve a problem. To them, formal processes can feel like unnecessary bureaucracy that slows down progress. Millennials, while certainly less rigid than Gen X or Boomers, are generally more accustomed to navigating and respecting established hierarchies. They were often onboarded into more traditional structures and are more likely to follow a process like emailing a manager's assistant to schedule a meeting with a senior executive rather than sending a casual DM. For them, the process is often a sign of respect and organizational order. Herein lies the misunderstanding. A millennial manager might see their Gen Z report's direct message to the department head as disorganized, disrespectful, or an attempt to go over their head. Meanwhile, the Gen Z employee sees their manager's insistence on going through the proper channels as gatekeeping redundant and a frustrating obstacle to getting work done. Neither is necessarily wrong, but their operating systems are in direct conflict. This is the authenticity hierarchy paradox. Gen Z's pursuit of authentic, direct communication can be perceived as a lack of respect for the very structure their millennial managers were taught to navigate. 4. Consequences of missing the wave. When these communication waves don't align, the consequences are more than just awkward. They can have a tangible negative impact on productivity, morale, and the bottom line. First, there's the TLDR effect. As we saw in our opening skit, long detailed emails from millennials can be a major hurdle for Gen Z. Conditioned by a world of snackable content and with an attention filter famously pegged at around 8 seconds, they are highly likely to skim. When they do, they can miss critical details, deadlines, or instructions, leading to mistakes, rework, and stalled projects. Then there's the tone-deaf text. A Gen Z employee's concise, emoji-laden message can be easily misinterpreted by a millennial manager as unprofessional, flippant, or dangerously unclear. A message like "project is on fire" could mean it's going great to Gen Z, but could send a millennial into panic, thinking the project is a catastrophic disaster. And perhaps the most subtle but damaging conflict is the punctuation war. For anyone who learned to type on a keyboard before a touchscreen, ending a sentence with a period is simply correct grammar. It's neutral. But for a generation that grew up where hitting's end concludes the thought, the addition of a period is an intentional act. It's often perceived as a sign of aggression, anger, or passive aggression. A simple "okay" from a manager can send a Gen Z employee into a spiral of anxiety, wondering what they did wrong to deserve such a cold, hard stop. These daily micro-frictions add up. They erode psychological safety, delay projects, decrease trust, and leave employees feeling constantly misunderstood. Over time, this can lead to disengagement, burnout, and even quiet quitting, where employees do the bare minimum because they no longer feel connected to their team or their work. 5. How to improve a user manual for each generation. So how do we fix this? It requires empathy and a willingness from both sides to learn a new dialect. First, a few tips for millennials and Gen X managers. Think of this as learning to speak Gen Z. Number 1, be concise, especially in chat. Get straight to the point. Ditch the formal greetings and lengthy preambles. Think headline, not essay. Number 2, embrace the visual. Don't be afraid to use an occasional well-placed emoji or GIF to add tone. It shows you're making an effort to meet them in their world. And number 3, ask, don't assume. If a message is unclear, just ask for clarification in a non-judgmental way. A simple, "Hey, when you use the skull emoji, does that mean good or bad?" Just learning the new lingo can foster openness and turn a moment of confusion into a moment of connection. Now, for Gen Z, your communication style is fast and effective, but learning to code switch is a professional superpower. First, know your audience. When you're emailing a client or a senior millennial leader, dial up the formality. Use full sentences, a polite greeting, and a proper closing. It shows respect for their communication norms. Second, provide context. Don't assume your slang and emojis are universally understood. If a message is critical, add a quick clarifying sentence. Instead of just "this is urgent," try something like "this is urgent," but adding the emoji so you know I'm not panicking. And third, over-communicate closure. A one-word done can feel abrupt. A better response is done. I've just uploaded the final version to the project folder for your review. It provides clarity, confirmation, and reassurance. 6. The Rosetta Stone: forging a common communication culture. While individual adjustments are great, the real solution is organizational. Companies need to create a system that works for everyone. The most effective strategy is to establish a clear communication protocol. This isn't about rigid rules, it's about creating a shared playbook. This protocol should define the right channel for the right purpose. For example, email is for formal announcements, client-facing communication, and detailed reports. Slack or Teams is for urgent internal questions, quick updates, and informal collaboration. Next, set clear expectations for response times. For instance, a policy might state that Slack messages should be acknowledged within 3 business hours, while emails get a response within 24 hours. This simple guideline removes ambiguity and reduces anxiety for everyone. Finally, companies can actively bridge the gap through training and mentorship. This could be a short, fun lunch and learn about generational communication styles. Even better, implement reverse mentorship programs. Pair a Gen Z employee with a millennial or Gen X leader. The Gen Z employee can offer coaching on new digital tools and social media trends, while the senior leader can provide guidance on navigating corporate politics, client relations, and long-term career strategy. It creates a powerful two-way street for learning and respect. 7. Conclusion: catching the same wave. Ultimately, this isn't a battle between two generations. It's an evolution in how we work. Both millennials and Gen Z are striving for the same goals to do efficient, effective, and meaningful work. They just have different toolkits shaped by the times they grew up in. Millennials bring a valuable sense of structure and a bridge between the analog and digital worlds. Gen Z brings incredible speed, digital fluency, and a new language for conveying emotion and tone online. When we stop seeing these differences as a source of friction and start seeing them as a source of collective strength, when we finally learn to catch each other's wave, we don't just reduce misunderstandings, we build teams that are more creative, more resilient, and far better equipped for the future of work. A future where communication will only become more integrated, more visual, and demand a higher level of emotional and cultural intelligence from us all. So what about you? Are you a best regards emailer or a skull emoji texter? Have you ever sent a thumbs up thinking it was friendly only to find out it was the workplace equivalent of a slap in the face? We want to hear your most hilarious, cringeworthy, or insightful communication breakdown stories in the comments below. Let's turn this comment section into a support group for the generationally confused. If you found this video helpful and finally understand why your boss's okay felt so aggressive, do us a favor, hit that like button and be sure to subscribe to the GENSHIFT channel to catch the wave on other fascinating workplace culture topics. Thanks for watching.